Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Hillary Fredrickson, and we're here with Caitlin Johnson, who is a phenomenal resource for all things PCOS. I'm so glad you're here with us.
Thank you for having me.
Caitlin,
I've never done a live YouTube thing, so this is exciting.
Awesome. Well, this is a really fun YouTube thing because I've done it from my daughter's dorm room, and we've done it from bad hotel rooms. And we travel around and
Talk about what technology can do for you.
It's so fun. I was like, well, so I guess I'm just going to do this thyroid talk here in my daughter's dorm room. Anyway, we're super psyched you're here. I've actually been stalking you for years, trying to get you on some of my summits, and that's not your total jam. But I got you here, and I'm so excited. Hey, my daughter is just walking around. So welcome.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
I love that you're a PCOS fertility dietitian and patient.
Mm-hmm.
I like how we were just chatting before we went live that both Caitlin and we have PCOS, and PCOS girls find their way through the medical system in a really interesting way. And we were talking about how women often don't know that who they should be looking for to help them with their PCOS.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then the kind of conventional model just sends you straight. Maybe you end up at your general practitioner, but they'll often send you over to the OB-GYN. And then the OB-GYN, Dr. Hillary said, you're expecting an obstetrician who's a surgeon to be helping you balance your hormones. And I think with just the typical medical care model, Western medicine offers medication and surgery. Period. I mean, there's not a whole lot outside of that they know how to go for the root cause and treat the root cause in a supportive, holistic way. And a lot of people want that and go to a doctor and expect they're going to receive that. And it's just not what they do. It's not what they've been trained to do. And so you go to your OB-GYN, maybe they do ultrasounds, maybe they do a really out of the park job at diagnosing you. And then maybe they're smart enough to send you on to a hormone doctor like an endocrinologist. But even at an endocrinologist office, most of what they have to offer are medications to try and help your hormones or suppress your hormones or activate different pathways. But it's not always like a root cause. Why is this condition developing, progressing, symptoms showing up, fertility interrupted? And what can we do to kind of jump in at different points? Maybe the low-hanging fruit, quick wins, or long-term strategies like blood sugar balance, which is not sexy. And nobody wants to hear me say one more time to high protein fiber meal. But those are your long-term strategies. And so how do we kind of find care models in the process and the right practitioners to help you go from diagnosis to whatever your personal goal is?
Yeah, I think that often this shows up for teenagers. So that's part of the issue. Mm-hmm. So typically PCOS, when teenagers are going to have more acne than the average, some weight gain typically, sometimes not. I was a lean type PCOSer, so I didn't have weight gain. That wasn't my issue, but I never had a period. So I had one maybe.
Which is like a blessing in high school. You're like, everybody else talk about their period. You're like, hey, I don't even get that. Or the other end of the spectrum, I see a lot of teenagers with PCOS bleeding all the time. Mm-hmm. It's usually like one or the other, and both aren't optimal.
And it's a really interesting thing, this continuum between. Yesterday I had a patient, I was just explaining to you that she's 25. Mm-hmm. She struggled with her weight and was always just told you're doing your weight wrong. And underneath a lot of endocrine disruptors and mold exposure acts as an estrogen endocrine disruptor. Mm-hmm. Has IBS she was diagnosed with. It's actually SIBO from the mold exposure. Anyway, it was interesting when I was taking her history, she had so much pain. So whenever there's so much pain is always a hallmark for endo. But I was thinking this kid is a PCOS kid. This beautiful woman has PCOS. And sometimes it's really hard to differentiate. And sometimes it looks like both. Like obviously endometriosis is very different pathophysiology, but they sometimes look the same.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think what happens to most girls is when they're teenagers often need birth control. And we want teenagers to be able to explore their sexuality in a safe way without getting, we want those
They're not
things.
ready for children. And so they need a way to avoid pregnancy.
And so it just gets skirted,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, it's sort of like, well, we're going to kill two birds. I hate that expression. Like, why am I killing birds? But we're going to
you've got goals. And I think this is where maybe they do it a little bit right. They're like, hey, we have this goal of symptom improvement and you don't want to get pregnant right now. And you might be sexually active, though you're probably not telling your two parents that. So let's put this prescription in. And then the advice they get is come back when you're ready to get pregnant. It's just like, there's no full continuum of care. Nobody's saying, hey, this is also a condition where even if you have lean PCOS, you're very likely to suffer with insulin resistance. And that has metabolic ramifications. We should be teaching you about and implementing strategies right now while you take the birth control. Like, I will hand over my credentials and stop giving out public information the day I hear a doctor have that type of a full conversation with a 16-year-old. And over millennia, 16-year-olds were mothers. Like, I think sometimes we think like, oh, they're just too young. Don't put that much on their plate. Well, they can handle it. Have an honest conversation and arm these women with what they need to do to manage their health for their lifetime. Have a full conversation about how much longer they ought to be on this, even if the goal is contraception until pregnancy. That doesn't necessarily mean birth control is a great option until you're ready to be pregnant. And so having a full continuum of care, other health practitioners, and also an exit plan off any prescription is something you should be having a conversation about the day you're prescribed it, in my opinion.
It's tough. There's like not that much time in a visit. So I have doctor sympathy because I am one. I'm a different kind of doctor, a naturopathic doctor, but I can spend an hour with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I spent an hour with this patient yesterday. It's like very hard to have all the things, right? So I definitely want to start out with, I love OBs. I think they're freaking brilliant. They deliver our babies in a really complex medical system. And if you don't love your OB, find one that you do love.
Mm-hmm.
They should be smart. They should be open, and then they should be really good at procedures because that's their job. Mm-hmm. Their job is to do surgeries and procedures and to deliver primary care. So they have a really interesting interface. And also know that it's one person and they can't deliver all your health care. So just like Caitlin was saying, you have to find somebody. I mean, every woman needs multiple people in her healthcare circle. She often needs a dietitian or somebody to work with nutrition. She needs somebody to help balance hormones or herbs in her life. Many women struggle at some point with anxiety, depression, insomnia. She needs to understand how those connect to her diet and how those connect to.
Absolutely.
And so our cute, beautiful, fantastic baby delivering, surgery giving OBs that can't do all that.
No, and they're not set up in a system to be able to do all that. I would insert asterisks, then they should be saying that because a lot of patients are showing up expecting that they know how to do all those things because they're who are doing their annual women's health visits.
Right. I love working with fertility patients and just they get frustrated with their reproductive endocrinologist. Why didn't I learn about herbs? Why didn't I learn about nutrition? And I'm like, honey, that is not their job.
It's not what they're trained in.
Right. Like, so if we just know as consumers and as women on the planet that we need multiple people, and those are going to change as we age, who we need to work with, and one person's not enough. And if you walk out of an office and you're like, I don't feel like I got my needs met. No, you didn't. So there are just so many beautiful people that will help you get your needs met. And health is always an investment. And any resources you invest early on pays dividends out in your lifetime. So when you're 16, 17, 18, and you're getting diagnosed with PCOS, and fertility is not what is calling your name,
At that
because
moment.
you don't really care about your egg health or egg quality. I mean, I put myself in my patient's shoes, and I'm talking to them about their egg quality, and they're literally like, whatever, lady. And I'm working so much on the fertility space, like it matters so much to these 30-year-olds and 40-year-olds that didn't get the memo. So I'm trying to deliver the teenager the memo. They don't care. So then as a provider, you're trying to figure out, what do they care about? They care about their weight, and they care about their skin.
Which the dynamic thing about treating those things, if you're doing it well, it impacts those other areas. So a lot of people ask me like, hey, what's the difference between treating me as a fertility patient with PCOS and treating me as just a normal patient with PCOS that doesn't have those fertility goals? I'm like, well, one big difference is when I'm not concerned about you getting pregnant all the time, I have a little bit more resources that we want to be a little bit more conservative when you're trying to conceive and we're trying to impact your fertility, because you could be pregnant and we need to make sure the things that you're doing are safe for that. But outside of that, what's going to help balance your hormones to improve your acne is often a root cause that's going to help balance your hormones and make weight loss easier. It's also going to be what improves your cycle and helps you make more progesterone. And so while the context of the treatment plan may be different, a lot of the foundational things are very similar. And I think that this expands well beyond PCOS. I mean, stress management, nervous system regulation, things that are like hot topics right now, getting quality sleep. This helps you no matter whether you're trying to get pregnant or you're postmenopausal. We need to work on those things. And a lot of these things we didn't really talk about 20, 30 years ago. Some people were into the behaviors that regulated those things, but not in the same way that they're applicable in this like very fast modern paced technology age that we're in. And so we have to come up with different resources to manage that. Blood sugar management is good for everyone.
Everyone. Alzheimer's, type 3 diabetes is Alzheimer's, everybody. I mean, it's going on. So like blood sugar management is important for everybody. So tell me give the audience a little bit of insight, because you have 3 little kiddos, and getting pregnant with PCOS is hard. So, and we were talking before we came on air, I'm like more of a dinosaur. I was doing this in 2000. So there were no apps, and there were no Aura rings, and there were no anything. So I was literally like taking my temperature here. And yesterday I had a patient that like is like, oh yeah, I have an Aura ring, and let me get to pulls up the app and downloads really quick her cycle and tracks her temperatures for the last 3 months. Like it all happened while I was like taking her blood pressure. She's literally working on one hand, and I'm taking blood pressure on another. And I was like,
so amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
And like just the ease of a 24-year-old doing this, or whatever. It was just like, this is super badass. But how about your journey? Like, how did it unfold for you? What were some of the key turning points for
my fertility
PCOS
journey
management?
Well, I had previous to trying to get pregnant, I'd been off the birth control pill for many years and had been working to regulate my hormones, not to get pregnant, but so that I would have a healthy cycle, a healthy weight, manage my symptoms, have self-esteem, just all the different ways that PCOS can really attack an individual. And had been using a copper IUD, which I have many thoughts on at this point, but it wasn't working for me. And it had like lodged into the side of my uterus. It was pinching me whenever I would go from sitting to standing or do lunges, exercising. It was not great. So we had to take it out. So, you're very limited in non-hormonal contraceptive options. So my husband and I switched to me using a diaphragm, and I was kind of at a point where I was like, well, if we got pregnant, great. If we don't get pregnant, great. So we very loosely tried. Basically, we weren't not trying to avoid, and nothing was happening. And my symptoms were so well managed. And yet my cycle was still 60 days, 75 days, 40 days, 60 days, variable, but irregular in its length. And I didn't know enough to be thinking, am I ovulating? So while my symptoms were well managed and I felt like my PCOS was so well under control after years of trying to manage it and going to school to learn science to figure out how I could manage it and starting to treat patients and how to manage it, I wasn't asking this one really important question, am I ovulating? And when I realized, hey, sperm has to meet egg, if we're doing this naturally, that is a requirement, right? I need to get an answer to this question. And I think of my sister, who's my older sister, and older sisters really give you a lot of advice and you don't always love it. She had handed me a book years prior about natural fertility planning and how could I, with like fertility awareness methods and other ways, listen to the signals my own body was sending me to tell me if I was ovulating, which was great because when I went to see a doctor, they basically said pee on ovulation predictor kits. And everyone was telling me I was fertile and I should be having sex. And yet I knew that wasn't the case because we weren't having positive pregnancies. I didn't have a baby yet. And we'd been trying for a few years at that point. So I started tracking and realized I did ovulate, and I ovulated very late into my late cycles.
Yeah,
But
you're
that's
ovulating
normal.
in day 47.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And being able to tell like, okay, some of our issue is that my husband worked second shift. And with that few chances in a year to ovulate, if I had 60-day cycles, you got to think I've cut my ovulation opportunities down by half. And that's a really simple concept that I try to drive home to women with PCOS is that if you're trying to get pregnant and your doctor sent you out and said, go try for a year and come back, and you're having 60, 75, 90-day cycles, your opportunities to get pregnant, even if you are ovulating, are few and far between.
Correct.
And so working on cycle regularity and hormone balance is critical so that we can even just give you opportunities at sperm meeting egg, right? So once we got a pretty good picture of what my cycle looked at, when we could optimize sex, we worked on some things like boosting my progesterone levels.
How did you do that?
So we did it naturally a few different ways. We kind of approached the goal, and this is the way that I like to think about it when I'm treating my gals, is we have a goal of increasing your progesterone. Okay, how do we do that? We worked on stress management. We lived in California. I was doing CrossFit. I was running. I was hiking. I was spinning.
Yep.
I really lowered my exercise output.
Yep. That was a huge part of my treatment plan as well.
And I think for a lot of women with PCOS, you've been told manage your weight. And so you do that, or you attempt to do that at all costs. And so that had made a very fit individual out of me. And yet that was actually working at cross purposes with my goal of increasing my progesterone.
Well, when we're testosterone dominant, we kind of thrive on the workouts and we're really good at it when we get into it. And like, I was like, I can run 8 miles and I can do this and I can do
it
that.
burns through your testosterone. And so it helps your symptoms. And so there's a lot at play there. That was one way that we did it. Yeah. I really increased my intake of orange and yellow, very like high consumption of those vegetables and fruits. And blood sugar balance was definitely key. And I started taking Vitex. Vitex was very helpful in increasing my luteal phase.
Yep.
So those were some of the things that we did. I also, at the time, had been working with a naturopath that had me rubbing progesterone oil on my abdomen and inner thigh. And frankly, I don't think that was the thing.
No, it's always everything.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now that I looked at it, I'm like doing the calculation of how much progesterone was there. I'm not sure it was doing much at all, frankly.
20 milligrams, but sometimes a little like
nudge
hormone balance, sometimes just a little can make a really big difference.
Yes.
And what I'm a progesterone user, not for everybody, but progesterone helped me. Vitex really helped me. I used a lot of herbs. And my naturopathic doctor, and I love how like the theme is like naturopathic doctors are good at this, right? Dietitian,
right. They
like
are.
PCOS specialist, naturopathic doctor. So like if you guys aren't working with one, like find one, a qualified one, a licensed one. Not they should have gone to med school. They should have taken board exams. So be super careful. Not in every state, they're not created equal. where Caitlin lives in Kansas, people can call themselves naturopathic doctors that did not go to school and did not take board exams. So you just have to be really conscientious about in California, we're all licensed if we call ourselves a naturopathic doctor. So it's a little different in different places. Anyway, but one of the big things I think that is key for women with PCOS have superpowers. And if you have PCOS and you're watching this, you're so stoked on so many levels. Once you get some of these things worked out, like you're going to be able to work harder and faster than your compadres that don't have as much testosterone than you. You're going to be able to like go strong and longer. Like you just can. It's just part of the chemical makeup. It's the benefit. It's the superpower. And like everything, our sometimes strength becomes our weakness, right? So because we can work out harder, go to work longer, support more people, have less fatigue, we sleep less. In general, my PCOS patients in general sleep less. They're in general quite high achievers. In general, they have anxiety. They ruminate at night. We get anxiety. Our testosterone balance drives us a little bit more towards anxiety, and so for sleep is so important. And what Caitlin's saying is when she's cut her hardcore exercise, it's helping to balance your stress hormone so that it's easier to sleep deeper and longer. Like, and so it's this, so that's one thing I really do like, even if it's just a little like nudge of progesterone, not like a woman in perimenopause, I give her 100 milligrams orally, whatever. For PCOS ladies, sometimes they just need like 15 milligrams to sleep better. But there's something about like, and Vitex can do it, or progesterone foods can do it. So it just depends on the degree of what the woman needs. But like, if sleep can be optimized.
Sleep is so important. What I find a lot of times is people are looking because they've been used to a Western medicine model. They're looking for I take this medicine and my acne stops. I do this and this, my gallbladder really hurt. They took it out. And the solution is quick, invasive, potentially side effect rich, but a quick response. And when we're talking about hormones and when we're talking about behavior change, there are some things you see really quickly. If we change what you're eating, I can guarantee within days your energy levels are going to be better and you're going to sleep better. It's going to take a while to trickle down to how much hair is falling out of your head or what hair is growing on your chin. Those things do change with time, but you don't see them as quickly. But
it's so good when it does.
But the piece of that you just brought up is sleep is so important. Sleep is so important not because of just its effect on your hormones, but somebody who sleeps well is going to have an easier time choosing a high protein breakfast.
It's true.
Because you're not going to be set up to be searching for energy all day long. And this is whether you believe you were created or evolution or what have you, like our body is set up to help us survive. If you don't sleep well, your body's going to say, give me the quick energy, and you're going to crave that. And so sleep, I just did a round of one-on-ones and a group program with them, and they were shocked that the first thing we talked about was stress management and sleep. I said, you will not sustain any of the behavior changes I'm going to ask you to do if we do not get these foundational things happening. And everyone in the room had multiple notifications going off on their phone in the night. Had a husband that worked out of the house at night, and like when they woke up and turned over, they were checking their phone for text messages. I mean, just things that we wouldn't have been doing 20, 30 years ago, certainly wouldn't have been doing 200 or 400 years ago, but our bodies can't catch up to this technology age as quickly. And so while it may not be comfortable to say, hey, don't Netflix and binge until you fall asleep, that's not a fun implementation, but it actually may be critical to you being able to exercise 3 times a week. Choose a high protein breakfast, like all these things that are going to be life-giving and life-changing and supportive of fertility or symptom improvement. They may not be fun right away, but I promise you, you will find enjoyment when I tell you to light a candle and read a book before bed 2 weeks into it. The first few nights may be uncomfortable compared to 2 weeks from now when you're like, actually, I'm really looking forward to that time.
Dr. Kara and I do this stress hormone reset. And one of the first things that we ask women to do one night, their first night, is just sleep with their phone out of the room. And it's really uncomfortable for tons of reasons. And everybody can justify why they need their phone next to them. Like, it's like, but what if this emergency and that emergency and this and that? And it's sort of like, okay, it's just 2 nights, try it. And with it out of the room, so many people, it's amazing, report, I slept so much better. It's like, it serves, even if it's in airplane mode, people find it's the space, the distance, the shutdown, the darkness. Like, we don't often sleep in darkness anymore. My house, I mean, I live in this hill, and even if I turn on my phone, my Wi-Fi in my room, my bedroom, I'm getting signals, like 16 signals I could like launch into their Wi-Fi systems. It's like, guys, this is having an impact on us. Like, it's so different.
And we are really remiss if we don't think that it is.
It's so different than sleeping under the stars outside,
No.
So,
and as you said, Hillary, we are teed up to be more anxious. Well, I saw that meme months, maybe a year ago, that was like, oh, I'm having trouble falling asleep. Let me just like pick up the thing that has all the world's information at my fingertips and just lay here and like, or binge or scroll through political ad. None of that is helping you or serving you. We were not created or evolved to know about the hurricane here and the world hunger there and the war here. There's too much, even with the good that we get from streaming a YouTube with a doctor and a dietitian talk about this, there's a lot of bad coming from it. And helping people realize that they need to set boundaries around certain things and prioritize their mental health, their quiet time, their time in nature. Like, you might be shocked, but those are things that are actually going to serve your fertility and serve your hormone balance. And we're not in this age of more and consumerism and having things. That is not what's promoted out there in the world. And so you're going to have an internal compass that's saying, this is important to me, and I'm going to prioritize that to see the benefits of it.
And like, to just circle back, your OB isn't going to talk to you about taking in green trees as a means to calm down your cortisol.
Right.
They don't have time for that. They didn't learn about that in their continuing education.
Yeah.
And so, and they shouldn't, because they're learning how to take out fibroids or how to do hysterectomies or whatever. Right. So the circling back is, if you are listening and you are struggling with a hormone imbalance, your periods are really long, you have acne, you have a hard time with central obesity, you can't lose weight, you have hair on your stomach, you have hair on your chin, you are angry in traffic, you are snappy with the people that you love, you can't sleep, PCOS is probably happening on some level. Even if it's not full blown. Like, I never had the huge acne, thank God, but I had a ton of chin acne always, because I had all these hairs that I was plucking. It was such a struggle. Once I figured out, like, oh, this is just part of my symptom picture, and I have more testosterone, which is a superpower of mine. So I'm not going to hate on it. I'm going to love on it. I'm just going to go get electrolysis, take care of that problem, then take care of my hormone regulation. Use the superpower for good. Know that I have go-to supplements, go-to exercise when I'm getting snappy in traffic, when I'm getting on my edge. But so like this is a longer process of learning and working. So you love working with women in group programs.
I do a lot.
Yeah.
So, we just released an app called the PCOS app, where it's more digestible. A year from now, it will literally replace Google for your PCOS questions. So things like, what types of foods might help boost my progesterone levels? Why does my hair fall out with PCOS? And then like taking that a step further, what can I do with food for that? What can I do with essential oils for that? What can I do with medicine for that? Should I be considering spironolactone? What does the evidence say? It will soon replace someone's need to go to Google. It also has bite-sized podcasts that all have like very practical application to them. So if we talk about sleep, we're going to give you 3 or 4 suggestions on what to do with that. And there are also recipes that we release weekly that are all about hormone balance, blood sugar friendly, eating a lot of vegetables and plant foods, but still getting protein in. And the recipes are designed to not only help you make a delicious recipe, but teach you why certain steps in the kitchen make it taste good. And what we've done to tinker with the recipe to make it blood sugar friendly so that you can say like, okay, well, she did this with her lasagna to make it higher in vegetable and fiber and higher in protein. My mom has a stuffed whatever pasta recipe. I can take some of these principles I learned and go apply it. So we're actually teaching people to be more competent in their day-to-day cooking and lives. So that's one way that anybody around the world for a very low cost can access high level, high quality, but easy to digest information about PCOS, whether you're trying to conceive or just living with this condition. We have a fertility program that we run. We just launched a fertility supplement line. So there's kind of like, do you want to work one-on-one with a PCOS dietitian? You can do that with us. You can do a DIY lower cost fertility course option. If you just want to be able to like on your phone, pull up today's article on PCOS, you can do that too. We're trying to meet people where they're at with their goals, where they're hanging out. Like one thing that I found was very frustrating for just my community, nobody that was even paying me, was like they'd be on Instagram and they'd hear me talk about how to approach exercise to help manage their PCOS. And then the next fitness influencer that showed up in the algorithm was telling them
the direct opposite,
or just like it wasn't for someone with PCOS, right? Which like the long and the short of it is do something sustainable that you love, that makes you feel good. Don't do it too hard and don't do it too little. I mean, that's really where it comes down to with PCOS. So being able to get people off of the algorithm that someone's feeding you so that they can make money to this is just information that's going to support you, and we can make a compassionate, restorative, peaceful environment for you to learn. That was the goal of the app, was like get people good information and help them feel confident and have like, today, what am I going to do? Because it's great to know like, hey, spearmint tea lowers testosterone, but like how much spearmint tea and where do I actually buy it? Because people have a hard time sourcing it, if getting it organic, those are the things like the next step type things that we're trying to teach people.
Beautiful. I have several patients I'm going to be sending your way right now. Because the truth is, at the end of the day, naturopathic doctor alone, like I think it's really important for women to work with naturopathic doctors.
1000% agree.
Hormone balance. And I'm up against that same time limitation that your OB is.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't be in your living room with you all the time or your kitchen with you all the time, though I want to.
Right.
And Kara, Dr. Kara and I at Cultivate work one-on-one with people, but it's the same dance, right? It's the long-term support. So I love this concept of apps, or even I love group programs, because when we just learn, I feel like healing, it's 2023. We really learned what isolationism did for people in medicine.
Amen. Community is so important.
We are up the biggest mental health crisis we've ever had in our society, more chronic illness than we've ever had, illness management that's become harder and harder. Things are more challenging. The conferences I go to now, everyone's like, whoa, like we're really having to use our skills. It's not little pushes anymore. It's like people are sicker. And the isolationism is such a massive part of it. And so find your tribe, get in community, get offline in the sense, stop scrolling because it's too much information. I'm a doctor. I've been for a long time, and my Instagram feed for Cultivate Fertility freaks me out. It just like makes me so overwhelmed. And I know a lot of it. And but I'm like, I'm not doing enough here. I should do that. Oh wait, oh my gosh, I haven't thought about that thing. Or it's so much information. So find somebody great. Like,
I think something to bring up too is that you can make a big difference today in your health with one small change. Like you heard us talk about sleeping better, getting outside in nature. If you're struggling with stress and anxiety, go watch a sunset. I like prescribe watching sunsets 2 or 3 times a week. The color changes. It's like those help you make melatonin and sleep better. But also, we see your nervous system calm down. And it's like, you don't have to pop a pill to sleep better, but you do need to be intentional. And the encouraging thing is you can choose one thing out of all the things we've thrown out today and just implement it for a few days and see how good it feels.
Love. Oh my gosh. Can we hang out more?
Well, next time I'm in the Bay Area, I will let you know.
Yeah. Come
My
see
best
me.
friend just moved back to Marin County, so I'm sure we'll be there sometime soon.
Oh, I hope so. Yeah, I'd love to have a high fiber lunch with you.
Mhm.
And I really appreciate you taking time out of Caitlin has 3 little children. She's clearly standing up
busy
for
over here.
women. What's that?
We're busy over here.
Busy. You're
Yeah.
standing up for women all over the place. And I just am so grateful you appeared with me today.
Thank you
So
for inviting me.
here. Happy day.